So right now we have, I know it's late night when I'm recording this. I'm recording this at about 1:30 a.m. in the morning, but I'm not going to be able to put out any more content for probably at least a half a week at the earliest. It'd be Sunday night before I put out anything else. So I'm putting this out right now while this idea is still in my head. Experimental, the new experimental changes went live where they did a couple of reworks to characters. They're not going to go live. It's not going to go live. The experimental mode is live, but they're not going in the live game. But I want to talk about some changes I potentially, based off of what I saw, some changes I would think. I think every character needs at least one slight change if I'm doing it. So we're going to do a one change for every character. Now, I'm going to start with the tanks first, because I'm a tank player, and I'm going to try and keep this short and sweet, because we got to cover everybody. So basically, all of this is going to be reflective of what they changed in the experimental game mode. And I'm going to, for the tanks, I'm going to go from bottom to top. What I mean by that is who I think the worst tanks are right now. So, I think you win. D.Va got a change. I'm happy with the extra thruster boost, where she got an extra second in thruster. I think that's good. D.Va right now is in a terrible state because dive is bad. So, this is what I want to do with D.Va. Okay, D.Va right now suffers from lack of poke. This is D.Va at close range. She shreds, obviously. Right? But this is D.Va at long range. She's terrible. The only real poke that she has is off of micro missiles. Right? This is what I would do for D.Va. I would give her a slight buff so that this does more damage per pellet at range. Like, I would increase the damage per pellet at maximum range by just a tickle, or I would increase the range before damage fall off slightly. So, like, you start to get damage fall off here, like right about here, you see there's a little bit of damage fall off, it's not a lot. Then you get to here, there's definite damage fall off. Then you get to here, and there's massive damage fall off. Just a slight tweak to her damage. But right now, how she plays with the thruster bonus, you know, she has to dive in and like, kill herself sometimes in order to get kills. She has no poke when micro missiles is off cooldown. I think given the thruster buff, where they're trying to buff her up, I could maybe say, okay, let's do it that way. Then the next weakest tank is Winston. Winston, there's a lot you can do. Winston is terrible right now. The only reason he's above D.Va is he has a shield. And I honestly think with Winston, they could fix him very simply. First off, stop reworking his fucking armor and health. That doesn't do anything to Winston. This is my idea for Winston. First off, they could give him an L2. He has nothing on L2. Right? They could just give him an L2. It doesn't matter what it is. Okay, they don't want to do that? Fine. They could take a second cooldown off of Luke. Put it down to 5 seconds. They could take a second or two cooldown off of his shield. Put it at 11 seconds. I think 11 seconds would be fine. Right there. They could give him an extra 20 ammo. I would love an extra 20 ammo on Winston. They gave it to Mei. I think they could do it here. Another thing I could say, where Winston is designed to be the type of character who leaps in, does damage, and melees, maybe they could make it so his melee does a little bit more damage than other characters. Right? Because look at this, look at this. An extra 20 ammo here would make this more reliable in my opinion.
Pardon me. Unfortunate.
Another thing they could do is with his ult, they could make it so that if he kills someone with a boop, he gets a little bit of ult charge refunded back to him. Something like that. They could add something to boop kills to make him more effective in my opinion. I just think right now Winston's in a terrible spot. Now, the next weakest hero out of tanks is Zarya. And they just did a nerf to Zarya where she loses more energy per second. Zarya to me has two simple changes they could do. One is more likely. So you can use your alternate fire 4 times before you have to reload. It used to be 5. I wish they bring that back. I wish they would do that. The other thing I would wish they would do, if I'm being honest, where she loses so much energy right now, her ult is very team fight driven. I would make it so that when she ults, pretend that's her ult, and sucks everyone in together, she has no loss of energy while it's active. That to me could make Zarya, if Zarya has high energy, rather than lose it, it might force her to waste her ult to take advantage of it, which can potentially lose a team fight. So the next weakest tank, in my opinion, is going to be Hog, unfortunately. They didn't really do a lot to Hog. For me, the only thing I would do to Hog is maybe buff the range on his alternate fire. It's not very good. Like, if you look, he does nothing. He just does nothing there. He does, like, nothing there. I would maybe just buff his range on his alternate fire. Either that, I would make it so that if you... Like, another change that they could do is if you heal, you regained 1 ammo when you heal. That's a small tweak. I think that might be broken, so I'm not really going to talk on that. The next weakest tank is going to be Reinhardt. They already gave a Reinhardt change, which I kind of like. By the way, they're not going to do multi-fire strike. That's Overwatch 2. And they're not going to do being able to control charge better. That's going to be in Overwatch 2. The thing I would make is that you could tie something to his shield, that when Reinhardt's shield breaks, there's now a 1-second delay before it begins to regenerate, but it does a small amount of damage in front of the shield. So when it breaks, it, like, actually physically shatters. Reinhardt right now is in an interesting state because he can either play as a dive character with no range that just gets in and kills everybody, or he plays as a shield tank. But when his shield dies, he has nothing but his long, lengthy cooldowns. Maybe making it so, like, oh, the shield dies, it just does a small, like, in a very small cone around him, like melee range. Like, if he can hit somebody with his melee, it should be doing that damage, is my opinion. So the next weakest tank in the game is going to be Orisa. I know I'm saying next weakest tank in the game when, you know, there's not a lot left. For Orisa, they gave her the cooldown. They gave her an extra second on the cooldown, but they buffed the shield up. I don't really think that helps balance her anymore. I think Orisa right now is at a very strong spot. I would maybe nerf her in that... Okay, so they gave her a bonus when she's in Fortify, she doesn't take headshot damage. I would make it so that when she's in Fortify, she can't deal headshot damage as well. I think that's a balancing factor to me. I would just make it so that Fortify negates headshot damage against you and for you. Just a simple little tweak like that could potentially balance her, because I think Orisa is going to jump back up into the meta and just start dominating again. Next we have Ball. I do not like the changes that they did to Ball on the experimental mode. I'm just telling you that right now. I think the Ball changes are terrible. One thing I would do is potentially... This is a change I'm a fan of. So right now, Ball will commonly use Grapple, Swing, and Pile Driver. I would like to see him have the ability to, after he pile drivers, like if he pile drivers without using grappling hook, he could then burn the grappling hook cooldown to pop himself back up into the air. Like, okay, so let me give you an example. So let's say I could then use my grappling hook. Instead of swinging like that, I could immediately, like, if I double tap grapple as an example, like this, then I could, like, pop myself back up into the air. I think that's an interesting play on him. I don't think he really needs that much changing. Last up for Sigma, again, I don't... A simple thing for me that you could do on Sigma is every certain amount of damage he absorbs with Kinetic Grasp could potentially be thrown into recovering shield health instead of personal health. I think that could be an interesting rework, because right now Sigma generally likes to play around his barrier, and then when barrier is broken, he plays around his sucky stuff. I wouldn't do that. I would move it, and he gets armor off of that. I would make it so that it gives him shield health, so that it could force Sigma to play around that. Now for the supports, we're going to do the same thing. Starting from the bottom support, which is Lucio. I don't like the changes that they did to Lucio outside of the boop change. I think the thing I would probably do to make Lucio effective, so he has his heal song right here. I would potentially make that last a little longer. I would add maybe an extra second to that, or increase the amount of healing he does. Make it so that that does a burst heal instead, so it's like a flat 100 heal to everybody in the radius when he presses it, as opposed to just like his generic cost. So then for the next weakest healer right now is Ana. Yes, I'm saying Ana's a weak healer. I love the change where she can nano herself, and I love the extra ammo. I think an interesting idea that they could potentially do to Ana, if I'm being honest, is I would increase the ADS time slightly on Ana. This is going to seem like an odd thing, but I would make it so that if she scores a kill while in ADS, her next ADS time is instant. Maybe as a passive to her to make her more of a combat medic, give her a little bit more damage output. Ana right now feels like she lacks utility. She seems like the only pure heal bot character in the game. Like for Ana, you're pretty much just going to burn Sleep Dart and Biotic Grenade, and outside of that you don't really do damage with her. And that to me is a problem right now, because all the supports really play around that. So then for the next weakest healer is going to be Moira. Moira to me is really, really easy to balance. I would add an extra 1 second cooldown to Fade. I would put it at 7 seconds. I would give her a nerf. I think she's kind of fine right now, but I think Fade gives her way too much survivability. Next up we're going to talk about Mercy. Mercy, everybody wants to talk about damage amp and how damage amp. For me, I would just simply... First off, the Guardian Angel change that they did to her doesn't mean jack shit. Where, oh, you get a kill, it reduces the it automatically resets the cooldown. It's a 1 second cooldown anyways. It's not like it's gonna matter. Like, look. Or 2 second cooldown, excuse me. 2 second cooldown. One thing I would say on the pistol is potentially when Mercy is in her ult, I would like that her pistol, if she shoots an ally with her pistol, it could heal them. That to me seems like an interesting way that they could buff her. If you're somebody that doesn't like using her staff, that wants to be more combat medic, you could just start blindly firing and healing and damaging at the same time. For me, the next weakest healer is going to be Zenyatta. And for Zenyatta, the one thing I would do, I would reduce the time it takes to max charge on Zenyatta, but I would reduce the damage per shot when he uses it. Kind of similar to McCree. I think this is great, but a lot of Zenyatta players just generally tend to use this as an execution move rather than necessarily shield break, and I think that could maybe give it a little bit of an advantage. Next up we're going to talk about Brig. I like the change that they did to Brig. The only thing I would maybe consider on Brig, I'm really tempted not to buff her or nerf her too much. Brig, to me, I have a simple solution on. Brig's whip shot, instead of knocking people away from you, I would reverse it and maybe have it pull them towards her. Now that to me seems a bit bad because you can snipe with Brig, with whip shot. Like, imagine, where's the bot at? Being able to snipe that and pull him into you, I think that's maybe a bit unfair to certain long-range characters, but that's about the only change I can see to Brig right now. And for Baptiste, the simple change that I would make is that first off, I don't like the changes that they did to Baptiste. The thing I would do on Baptiste maybe is that when he activates his ult, like say that's his ult right here, he just pops that up. His ult would lock him out of his regenerative burst and his immortality. Like, those abilities would be locked out while his ultimate is up. It would force him to heal his team through his primary fire. Force him to damage through that. He wouldn't be able to, like, play like Baptiste. Alright, for the damages, I'm just gonna go alphabetical just because I don't have time to rate the damages. So, for Ashe, the change I would make to her, you know, they nerfed Dynamite, which I don't mind that. The change I would make it so that Coach Gun cannot detonate Dynamite. That's a simple change I think they could make to her that would nerf her damage output at low tier pretty well. Just making it so that Coach Gun is like a pure escape ability or knockback. The Bastion change is nice, getting the speed boost while in heal form, while you're healing. The only thing I could really consider changing on Bastion is, so his sentry mode right now I would make it so that I would remove the switch effect, where like he reloads automatically. You see how he reloads automatically when he switches forms? It's a common Bastion trick. I would remove that, but make it so that he regens ammo while healing. Just to force his heal to be like either an offense or a defense. Doomfist, to me, I think should passively recover his shields. So what do I mean by that? I think Doomfist is in a bad spot right now. If you know how to play him, you're great. But you see how, like, he gets that shield right there, but it's whittling away, and he's already taking damage in the thick of things? I would do one of two things. Make it so that he can generate shield off of his primary fire, or make it so that the shield that he generates off of using his abilities does not go away. I know it's a balancing factor because Doomfist can be overpowered, but I think he's at a terrible spot right now. Echo is quite easy to me.
100%. Good to be back.
I would nerf her in a very interesting way. Right now she has insane burst damage. I would make it so that when you use sticky bombs, her focusing beam automatically goes on cooldown for 2 seconds. So I think right now the problem that Echo has, okay, this is the problem. She can use her abilities and very quickly kill squishy targets like that. She has incredible burst. You know, oh, I'm just gonna body, I'm gonna sticky, I can start killing this target and then swing the beam over and kill that target. I would make it so that she can't do that combo. I honestly would, because her primary fire, believe it or not, does an insane amount of damage. And it has good range too on it. That's just an insane amount of DPS right there. I don't like the Genji change, if I'm being honest. The only thing I would maybe say is that when Genji gets a reflect kill, the ammo that he reflects is added to his ammo count. I think a lot of Genji players have a problem where they're like fire, fire, fire. They have to go to reload. Like watch. They have to go to reload and they end up having to use deflect, and as soon as they come out, they're stuck in a reload animation. I would potentially, like, mitigate that a little bit. If they reflect damage, so it makes it, if they don't shoot into the Genji, then he's still fucked. If they do shoot into the Genji, then, well, he's fine.
Comes honor.
I don't like the change they did to Hanzo's ult. I think it removed a little bit of the zoning effect. The only change I would realistically make, in my opinion, if I want to give him a nerf, I would make it so that this no longer reveals Sombra. Sonic Arrow no longer reveals Sombra. That's the only change. When she's in Invis, I think she should stay in Invis. I think Hanzo is a real counter to Sombra at high-level play, which kind of makes Sombra a problem, because Sombra is a counter in herself to high-level play, but we'll get to her in a minute. Junkrat, to me, has an easy trick. I think that if your Steel Trap is not currently active or in use, right? When you die, it automatically deploys at your feet. I think that's a nice passive. I think that would give him a lot more lethality at close range, because right now he's literally just a backline spam character. So that's just a small change I would make. McCree, to me, is kind of in an interesting spot. At low-level play, one of the most annoying things is the type of McCrees that do nothing but spam the hammer. Spam the hammer, like this. What I would do, if I'm being honest, on Fan the Hammer, is if you flashbang, similar to Echo, it would lock you out of Fan the Hammer for 2 seconds. It wouldn't lock you out of your primary fire, just Fan the Hammer. I think that's a balancing factor. I'm happy with the changes that they made to Mei. The only thing I would really say for Mei is maybe increase the range on her Frost. I would maybe increase. What I would do is I would put it so that at maximum range, you deal the damage, but you don't get the freezing effect. So similar to what they did to Lucio with his crossfade, where it would increase the range on it. If you were at close range, like if you're here, it would freeze. But if you're like here, instead of freezing, like this is a good example. So right here, I would give her maybe a little bit longer range, like right here. This would do damage, but it wouldn't freeze. This would do damage and freeze. So it would kind of force her to be more aggressive up close if she wants to freeze, as opposed to just doing damage.
I will protect the innocent.
For Pharah, a simple play that I could make is that first off, I don't like the change that they did to Pharah. The big thing I would say for me, if I was a Pharah player, is that if you get a boop kill with your concussive rocket, that boop kill would give you like a certain portion of your fuel back, as a good example. That could help keep her in the air longer. Reaper, to me, I feel is underpowered, but he's very much like Doomfist. If you overpower him too much, he's kind of weak. The change I would make, if I'm being honest, is that I would make teleport damage immune. I would make it so that it can be interrupted by crowd control, but he's damage immune when he teleports. Or you could do the reverse, where he's crowd control immune, but not damage immune. So if a Reinhardt charges into him, he takes the damage, but he doesn't get grabbed and pinned. Same thing with a Roadhog hook. I think that could be a good thing. I think that'd be better, because he's damage immune in his other form, so. Soldier, to me, is in a very solid state right now. First off, I don't like the multi-charge thing. I think it's a bit too powerful, giving him the multi-charge. The only thing I would say maybe is that Regenerative Field regenerates ammo for allies that are full health. Like if allies are in the circle of that they potentially either regenerate health or shield, depending on what they have, over a certain duration. So like you would regenerate, like if you're Ana, you regenerate 1 ammo per second. If you're, Mei, you regenerate 10 ammo per second, something like that. I think that could give him a little bit more of a buff. Sombra. I don't like the increased hack duration. That takes about twice as long to do now, even though it lasts a second longer. And I don't like the translocator change. To me, what I would make the change on Sombra, I would make it so that, like right now, if you see what I did on Sombra, she currently decloaks as soon as she goes to hack. I wouldn't do that. I would make it so that she only decloaks at the end of her hack. If they want to, especially if they want to keep those changes. If they don't want to keep those changes, then fine. Then I would not do that. If they don't want to keep those changes, I would make it so that Translator reloads your ammo. That's just a simple play. Because a lot of people like to camp Sombra teleports. I think that's just a quality of life change. If she gets jumped and she's low health, she has at least a fighting chance. She doesn't have to reload. Symmetra, to me, kind of needs a nerf. The first thing I would say on Symmetra, I don't think the sticky bomb thing should be a thing. I think that you should only be allowed to teleport allies who manually press the teleport button. That's the change I would make. That's the only change I would make to her. I think it's a nerf. I think it's well deserved. Torbjorn. Okay, so Torbjorn has the turret change right here. Alright? I'm not a fan of the Torbjorn change. What I would do, if I'm being honest, is I would buff the damage on his hammer. Just for the memes. If you look, he doesn't do more damage on hammer. It's 4 kills. It's slightly more damage on hammer than it is on melee. I would buff that a little more. It could potentially reward a more aggressive playstyle on Torbjorn. I kind of like the Tracer change, giving her the extra health and nerfing recall. The only thing I would really say on Tracer that I would change is, on Tracer, I would make it so that she no longer gains ammo when she rewinds as well, but it gives her 1 blink. I think a common mistake a lot of Tracer players do, they burn all their blinks, shoot, rewind, and when they come out, they only have 1 blink left. I think as a balancing factor, like, just because they're increasing the cooldown by so much, they could just simply give that back. Last up is for Widow. Widow to me is actually relatively balanced given how high skill she is. The only thing I would maybe say to Widow, I would love them to do something similar that they did to Soldier, where her weapon, her AR fire, no longer has spread. I think right now she's a high skill character in terms of her ability to get headshots, but anybody can pick up Widow and just play them as an AR goon. And I think that's really a good way to determine if you're a skill-based player because you're a sniper player, or a skill-based player because you're an FPS player. If you're an FPS player and can do something like that with recoil, because look, she doesn't have recoil, she has spread. And I think as a balancing factor, you know, if you have good aim, then you would be just as dangerous, and you could maybe give Widow an alternate playstyle. But anyways, that's my thoughts on the experimental changes some of the experimental changes that they did, and that is also my thoughts on the various changes I would implement as well. Not all these are like serious or something, but I think one or two little tweaks could work. So, anyways, thank y'all for watching.